Okay, so today we're going to talk about a quick review of solving 1 and 2 step equations, and then we're going to start talking about solving 1-step inequalities as well. So let's start off with reviewing how to solve some of these 2-step equations. So remember, whenever you're solving equations, you're going to look to do your addition or subtractions first. And so in number 1, I'm trying to solve for x, and I notice I have 2x minus 4 equals 6. So here's my equal sign. I'm going to draw a line there. So this means 2 times x, and then I have this like subtraction. So I'm multiplying, and then I have a subtraction. So we're going to get rid of the subtracting 4 first. The inverse operation, or in other words, the operation that kind of undoes subtracting 4, is adding 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides of the equation. Negative 4 plus 4 cancel out, and I have 2x equals, and then I have 6 plus 4 on the right-hand side, and so 6 plus 4 equals 10. Now I have 2x equals 10. Again, remember, 2x means 2 times x. The opposite or inverse operation of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we just have like 1x or just x. And then 10 divided by 2 is 5. And remember, my answer is always going to be in the form like x equals a number or a equals a number, or whatever the variable is. All right, let's check number 2. So on number 2, my variable is on the right-hand side, and that's okay. So I'm going to start with my line down the middle at the equal sign. And on the right-hand side, 3x means 3 times x. And then I'm not adding or subtracting anything in addition to that multiplication. So to undo that multiplication, I'm just going to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 cancels out. It's 1. So we just have x, or 1x, and then negative 9 divided by 3, use your calculator, that's negative 3. Okay, number 3. So here's the equal sign. I have the x's here. 7x means 7 times x. 7x, or 7 times x plus 2. So again, I'm getting rid of that plus 2 first. The inverse operation of adding 2 is subtracting 2. I'm subtracting 2 from both sides. So I have 7x equals negative 21. Because that 2 minus 2 is 0, or in other words, it like cancels out. So now I just have 7x equals 21, and 7x means 7 times x. To undo multiplication, I'm going to divide. So 7 divided by 7 cancels out, and I have x equals negative 21 over 7, or negative 3. Number 4, here's my equal sign. So here's my x. I have negative 2 times x minus 1. Getting rid of the adding or subtracting first. So the opposite operation or inverse operation of minusing 1, subtracting 1, is adding 1. So negative 1 plus 1 cancels out, and 9 plus 1 is 10. So over here on the left-hand side, I still have that negative 2x. Negative 2x means negative 2 times x. So I'm dividing both sides by negative 2. And now these cancel, and x is equal to 10 divided by negative 2. Use your calculator, but that's negative 5. All right, number 5. Here's my equal sign. Here's my x. Remember, when I have that fraction, a fraction is just a fancy way of writing a division. So this means x divided by 4, and then I'm subtracting 5. Like always, getting rid of the addition or subtraction first. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And then I have x over 4 equals 2 plus 5, which is 7. So remember, x over 4, that means x divided by 4. What operation undoes division? Multiplication, right? So we're going to multiply by 4. Multiplying by 4 and dividing by 4 cancel each other out, but then I got to multiply by 4 on the other side. So if I use my calculator, 7 times 4 is 28. All right, so that was my quick review of solving equations. We're going to start talking about inequalities. So we have 4 inequality symbols. This one here means greater than. This one here means less than. Make sure you're copying these down into your notes. And then if I have the line underneath of the less than or greater than symbol, that means like less than or equal to. And then we have greater than or equal to. So pause the video here for a minute if you need to, so that you can copy these down. All right, so now that we know what these symbols mean, let's learn how to solve and graph some inequalities. So first, what does this say in words? So think about what that symbol means again. So x is less than 7, or in other words, a number, because x just represents a number or like a variable. So a number, in other words, like x, is less than 7. So think about the numbers that are less than 7. Think about your number line that I have drawn here for you. So the numbers that are less than 7 are like 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. But also all these negative numbers, -1, -2, -3, they're all less than 7. All negative numbers are less than 7, right? So my solution actually starts at the number 7. But here's the thing, it doesn't include 7. 7 is not less than 7. So you're going to put what we call an open circle at the number 7. And then we're going to shade every number that is less than 7. So we're going to shade this number line. And we're going to put an arrow at the end, because any number all the way down to negative infinity, so like -1,000,000, -10,000,000, if I keep going to negative infinity, all those numbers are less than 7. So every number, 6.9 is less than 7, right? But 7 itself is not less than 7. So we indicate that with that open circle there. Now, what if it were x is less than or equal to 7? Remember, that symbol means less than or equal to. So a number is less than or equal to 7. That means like 7 could be included. 7 is less than or equal to 7. So the way that would change this graph is I would fill in this circle, this point at the number 7, to indicate that I'm including that point. So we call it an open circle. So this one up here got an open circle because we didn't include the number 7. And this one down here got that closed circle because we do include the number 7. Okay. So we're going to solve inequalities. So in order to solve inequalities, you're going to use inverse operations to isolate the variable to get the variable by itself. Remember, that's like if it's like x plus 7, or if it's like addition, we're subtracting. If it's multiplication, the inverse is division. But here in number 2, this is the important part, and it's kind of new. This is the new part. Whenever you multiply or divide with a negative number, so it's not just because you're multiplying or dividing. If you're multiplying, dividing with a negative number, you flip the inequality symbol. Meaning, if it was a less than, it turns into a greater than. If it was the greater than or equal to, it turns into a less than or equal to. And then after you finish solving for x or for the variable, you're going to graph your solution. Anything that is a solution to the inequality is going to be shaded. Let's try some examples. So we're going to solve and graph the inequalities. Number 1, x is greater than or equal to -1. X is already by itself. It's already solved. So all we have to do now is graph. So I'm going to start with a number line. And all I need you to do is put the number that we're focusing on the number line. So whatever x is equal to or less than or whatever, you need to put on the number line. And then you need to think about whether we're going to use an open or a closed circle. And you might want to jot this down if you didn't earlier. If you have a less than or greater, if you have a less than or equal to or a greater than or equal to symbol, you're going to use a closed circle. And if you have a less than or a greater than symbol, you're going to use an open circle. So in this case, I have a greater than or equal to. So I want to include the number -1. And I want to know, or I want to shade where x is greater than -1. Now, here's my hint for you. If you have the variable over on the left-hand side of the inequality, you're going to shade in the direction that this inequality is pointing. So see how the inequality is kind of pointing this way? You're going to shade this way. So the numbers that are greater than or equal to -1 are 0, 1, 2, 3. All these numbers to the right on the number line. And I include -1 itself. So that's my graph. Number 2. So I'm going to solve first. X is not by itself, so I'm solving. So remember, this means -2 times x. To get rid of multiplication, I divide. So I'm going to divide by -2. Divide by -2. But let me go back here for a second. Look at this thing that I starred here for you, number 2. Because I'm multiplying or dividing with a negative number, I'm going to flip the inequality sign. So I'm dividing by -2. So what I'm dividing by, that number is negative. So I'm going to flip this inequality sign. These things are going to cancel, and x is now going to be greater than. See how this started as a less than? It's now going to turn into a greater than. And 10 divided by -2, use your calculator, -5. So now I'm going to graph it. I'm going to start with a number line. You're going to put -5 on your number line and think about, what do I need? Do I need an open or a closed circle? So I need an open circle because it's a greater than, not a greater than or equal to. And is the x on the left-hand side of the inequality? It is. So I can kind of shade the way the inequality symbol is pointing. So I'm going to shade in this direction. And then there's my graph. So number 3, 12 is greater than or equal to 3x. So 3x means 3 times x. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And I'm not going to flip the inequality because I'm dividing by a positive 3. So no need to flip the inequality. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Is greater than or equal to, these cancel, and then x. Now, when I go to graph, I'm going to start at 4 on my number line. But here's the thing. Notice that the x is now on the right-hand side of the inequality. So I cannot shade the way the arrow is pointing. I'm going to actually shade in the opposite direction. So I'm going to shade this way. And my 4 gets a closed circle because it has the or equal to part. So I'm shading over to the left. I'm going to show you another trick. If you have your x by itself and it's on the right-hand side, you can put it on the left-hand side. So I'm going to flip the x and the 4, but when you do that, you also have to flip the inequality. So if you flip the sides, you have to flip the inequality still as well. And now, if the x is on the left-hand side, where's the arrow pointing? It's pointing to the left, so this thing got shaded to the left. Okay, so either that solution or that solution both give you the same graph. Let's try number 4. 8 is less than x plus 6. So x plus 6, opposite or inverse operation. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides. 6 minus 6 is 0. It cancels out. 8 minus 6 is 2. And I subtracted, so I won't be flipping because I remember I only flip the inequality symbol if I multiply or divide by a negative number. I don't like to graph it like this because I want the x on the left-hand side. So I'm going to flip the x and the 2. But do you remember what you have to do? If you do that, you have to flip the way the inequality is going as well. So now this is my answer. X is greater than 2. So I'm going to make a number line. Here's 2. It gets an open circle because it doesn't have that line underneath. It's not an or equal to. And because I now have x on the left-hand side, I shade the way the arrow is pointing in the inequality. There's my graph. All right, number 5. Negative 3x is greater than 9. So this means negative 3 times x. To undo multiplication, I'm dividing. Negative 3 cancels. But what am I dividing by? Remember, I'm always on the lookout. If I'm multiplying or dividing, I'm thinking, well, I'm dividing by a negative. So this is x is less than. Because I'm dividing by a negative, I have to flip that inequality symbol, right? It started as a greater than, flips to a negative. 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. And the x is on the left-hand side, so I'm good to go with graphing. I have a negative 3. It gets an open circle because there's no line underneath, right? It's like just a plain old less than. And the x is on the left, so I shade the way the inequality is pointing. So I'm shading over here. And then finally, for this page, number 6, I have 12 is less than or equal to 6x. This means 6 times x. Divide by 6. Am I flipping the inequality? I am not, because I'm dividing, but I'm dividing by positive 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Now, I don't like this because the variable's on the right. So remember we said we can flip the x and the 2, but we also have to now flip the inequality. So there's my answer. Number line, I need the number 2. So it's x is greater than or equal to. Because of this or equal to, that line, we got a closed circle and we shade to the right with an arrow. Remember, the arrow at the end is so important because it indicates that my answer goes to infinity. All right. So I want you to pause the video at this point and I want you to try these couple problems on your own. When you unpause the video, you're going to see me go through these and you can check your answer. Okay, so hopefully you had time to do these couple problems. Let's go through and check these answers. So number 7, I'm going to get x by itself by adding 7 to both sides. So I have x is greater than 17. And then I start at 17. My x is on the left-hand side. That's good. It's a greater than symbol, so it's going to be an open circle. And the inequality is pointing to the right-hand side, so that's where I shade. Number 8, I have negative 3x, so negative 3 times x. To undo multiplication, I'm dividing. Oh, if I'm dividing, what am I dividing by? -3. If I'm dividing by negative, I flip the inequality. 15 divided by -3, use your calculator, is -5. The x is on the left-hand side, so I'm okay with that. Answer the way it is. And so here's -5. Because of this line, this or equal to part, remember we got a closed circle, so we just write the circle and color it in. The x is on the left, and so the arrow is pointing in this direction, so I'm shading in this direction. Number 9. Now I have that fraction, but don't let that intimidate you. Remember, a fraction is really division. It's x divided by 4. The opposite of division is multiplication. If I multiply by 4, they are going to cancel. I multiply by 4 over here. So anytime I multiply or divide, I think, what kind of number did I multiply by? I multiplied by 4. That's positive. So I'm not flipping the sign. So it's just x is greater than -2 times 4 is -8. So the variables on the left, that's good. -8. We have an open circle, and x is greater than -8 shades this direction. All right, number 10, x plus 9 is greater than 3. The opposite of plus 9, we're going to subtract. So we have x is greater than 3 minus 9. Use your calculator. -6. The x is on the left-hand side. So -6. And we got an open circle because it's a less than, not a less than or equal to. And we're shading to the right. Okay, number 11. -20 greater than or equal to 4x. So 4 times x. We're dividing both sides by 4. Dividing both sides by 4. These cancel. -20 over 4 is -5. Again, I'm dividing, but I'm dividing by +4. So it doesn't matter that my answer was -5. It matters the number that I divided by. What did I divide by? That was a positive. So I'm not flipping the inequality. But I don't like that x is on the right-hand side. So if I want to flip the x and the -5, now I am going to flip the inequality to be able to flip those. All right, so I have -5. Because of this or equal to, I have a closed circle. And its x is less than or equal to, so we're shading down here. And then finally, number 12, x over 8. Remember, a fraction is division. Opposite of division, multiplication. I'm going to multiply by 8. Whenever I multiply or divide, I think, okay, I'm multiplying by 8. That's positive, so I don't worry about flipping the inequality. Dividing by 8 and multiplying by 8, they cancel out. So I just have x is greater than 1 times 8. The x is on the left-hand side already, so that's good. X is greater than 8 gets an open circle. And because the x is on the left, I'm shading over to the left. So there's my graph. And that is all I have for you. So now you're able to solve 1- and 2-step equations, and now you're able to solve and graph 1-step inequalities. Thanks for watching.